Ethan woke to the sharp buzz of his phone at 4:03 a.m. The kind of sound that doesn't just interrupt sleep but tears straight through it. For a moment he didn't move. His vision was blurry, his mind still stuck somewhere between dreaming and waking. He reached out, grabbed his phone from the nightstand, and blinked at the bright screen. One message. From his neighbor Hannah. Her name alone already felt strange at this hour. She was quiet, private, always polite, and never the type to disturb anyone. Seeing a text from her before sunrise made his heartbeat spike even before he opened it. The message was short. No greeting, no explanation. Stay home today. Someone's been watching you for weeks. Ethan's breath caught. He sat up in bed, wide awake instantly. For a long second, he only stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. Hannah wasn't dramatic. She wasn't someone who made wild claims. She barely talked to anyone unless she had to. A warning like this wasn't normal for her. He read the text again. And again. The meaning didn't change. His eyes moved to the window beside the bed. The blinds were shut, but the faint blue-gray of early morning pressed against them. The house felt too still, like the air had paused. He pushed the blanket off and walked to the window. With one finger he nudged a slat open and peeked outside. Silent street. Empty sidewalk. No cars. No shadows. Nothing out of place. Ethan let the blinds fall back and stepped away, rubbing his face. This had to be a mistake. Maybe Hannah misunderstood something. Maybe she saw a stranger walking around last night and jumped to conclusions. Or maybe she had a bad dream and sent the message before she fully woke up. But that didn't sound like her either. He stood in the dark room, heart still beating too fast, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling crawling along his spine. He checked the time again. 4:05 a.m. Too early to call her. Too early to ask questions that might not even have real answers. He set the phone down, trying to think rationally. He had a busy day ahead. He couldn't start it by panicking over something that was probably an exaggeration. He stretched his neck, trying to calm his nerves. But deep down, something inside him whispered that this wasn't nothing. He walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. The shock jolted him slightly back to normal. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. Eyes tired, jaw tense. This wasn't how he wanted to begin his morning. Not today. Because today meant something. A full year since everything in his life had broken apart. A year ago, Ethan and Marco had stood side by side as business partners. They had built their tech company from scratch. Late nights, endless planning, impossible deadlines. They survived everything because they trusted each other. Or at least Ethan thought they did. But Marco had been working behind his back for months. Secret deals. Misleading investors. Creating a narrative that painted Ethan as unreliable and unprepared. Every lie was designed to make Marco look like the only real talent behind the company. The betrayal had come fast and cold. By morning, Ethan had been pushed out. By night, Marco had taken full control. Within a week, Ethan was replaced, erased, and humiliated. That day lived inside him like a wound that refused to close. Today marked 1 year since that fall. And no matter how much Ethan tried to move on, the memory stuck to him like a shadow. He couldn't forget the anger, the confusion, the sense of being fooled by the one person he trusted most. So no, he didn't have time to think about warnings from neighbors or mysterious people supposedly watching him. Not today, when his energy was already balancing between bitterness and determination. He brushed his teeth with quick, sharp movements, almost as if trying to scrub away the lingering unease. Every now and then he glanced toward the window or the doorway, an instinctual habit he didn't fully recognize. His stomach churned, though he told himself it was only from the early wake-up. He changed his clothes, grabbing a simple gray shirt and dark jeans. He moved with purpose, fast, as if staying in motion kept him from fully processing the message he'd read. He entered the kitchen, switched the coffee maker on, and leaned against the counter. As the machine hummed, he opened the text one more time. The words felt heavier in the silence. Someone's been watching you for weeks. Weeks. Plural. Not yesterday. Not last night. Weeks. He swallowed hard. Should he text her back? Should he ask what she meant? Should he knock on her door and demand answers? But he didn't want to start what felt like a storm before sunrise. He set the phone aside and took a deep breath. He needed to be calm, clear, focused. He grabbed his coffee, finished half the mug in seconds, and grabbed his bag. As he reached for the front door, his hand paused on the knob. Something in his chest tightened. The house was quiet, too quiet. He could hear the ticking of a clock somewhere in the living room. The sound seemed louder than usual, as if the walls were thinner. He shook off the thought. This was ridiculous. He wasn't the kind of person who gave in to fear. Not after everything he'd survived. Not after losing his company, his stability, his entire sense of direction. If he had let fear rule him, he would have never fought to rebuild his life. He had a new job now, an opportunity to start fresh. He couldn't let some vague warning derail him. He opened the door. The morning air hit him with a cold sharpness, surprising for the season. A faint breeze moved through the street, rustling the leaves along the curb. Pale light from the rising sun cast long shadows across the pavement. He looked around carefully, left, then right, expecting something strange, something unusual, something that would make Hannah's message make sense. But the street looked the same as every morning. Calm, familiar, predictable. He stepped outside. Behind him, the door clicked shut. He took a few steps down the walkway, the crunch of gravel under his shoes the only sound. His breath came out in small white puffs he hadn't expected. He tightened his jacket around himself and walked to his car. He clicked the key fob. The lights blinked. The car beeped once. He opened the door and sat inside, but he didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he looked through the windshield, scanning the neighborhood. No cars driving past. No open garage doors. No joggers. No dog walkers. Just the soft glow of morning slowly rising over quiet houses. He started the engine, but the unease hadn't left. If anything, the silence only made it worse. The world felt too still, like everything was watching him. He forced a breath and pulled out of the driveway. As he drove toward the main road, a car appeared in his rearview mirror. He glanced at it once. A black sedan. Normal. Common. Nothing strange. But it stayed behind him at every turn. Not close. Not threatening. Just there. He told himself he was imagining it. Maybe he was on edge because of the message. Maybe he was connecting dots that didn't exist. He tried to focus on the road ahead instead of the mirror. Several blocks later, the sedan turned away at a stop sign, disappearing behind a row of houses. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Maybe Hannah misread something. Maybe a stranger visiting a friend looked suspicious to her. Maybe she saw someone walking near his yard at night and thought it meant something more. But even as he tried to calm himself with logical explanations, a small voice in his mind refused to quiet. Someone's been watching you. He drove faster. By the time he reached the main road, the sky had shifted from dark gray to pale blue. The city was waking up. More cars, more movement, more noise. The world felt normal again, and for a moment he allowed the tension to ease from his shoulders. He forced himself to focus on the day ahead. Work. Progress. Routine. That was what he needed. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Not shadows that might not even exist. As the city grew brighter, he pushed away the lingering dread. He didn't know yet that ignoring Hannah's warning would become the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't know the quiet street he left behind wasn't as empty as it looked. And he didn't know that by stepping outside that morning, he had walked straight into someone else's plan. But for now he drove forward, unaware that the next hours would pull him into a storm he never saw coming. Ethan reached the office a little after 7, feeling more worn out than he wanted to admit. The drive had been quiet, but not the peaceful kind. His mind kept circling back to Hannah's message, looping it like a warning he wasn't sure he should ignore. The building looked normal when he pulled up. Same glass doors, same dull lights glowing inside, same coffee smell drifting from the lobby cafe. Yet the moment he stepped through the doors, a strange tension filled the air. He felt eyes on him before he even saw the people. The front desk receptionist, who usually barely looked up from her screen, stared at him for a few seconds too long. A group of coworkers talking near the elevators paused mid-conversation and tracked him with their eyes as he walked by. Even the security guard, a broad man with a calm face, gave him an unusual nod, like he was greeting someone important, someone he knew well. But none of these people knew him well. He worked alone. He kept his head down. He had no reason to draw attention. Yet somehow he had it. He pressed the elevator button and stepped inside, trying to shake off the feeling crawling up his spine. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe the early text had made him imagine things. Maybe the elevator doors closed, and he caught his reflection in the mirror-like surface. His eyes didn't look tired. They looked alert. Too alert. The elevator opened on the 4th floor. His shared workspace filled the entire wing. Rows of desks, quiet hums of computers, low whispers of people starting their day. Everything looked normal, but something in the atmosphere felt heavier, like the room was waiting for something to happen. He sat at his desk, pushed his bag aside, and opened his laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment as he steadied his breathing. But the moment the screen came to life, his stomach dropped. His files were different. Folders he had locked were unlocked. Files he had hidden were moved. A document he had renamed just last night had been opened minutes before he arrived. Timestamps made that painfully clear. Ethan blinked in disbelief. He had been careful. He used strong passwords, encryption, two-factor authentication. No one should have been able to get in. Unless it wasn't a digital break-in. Unless someone had physically used his laptop. His mind raced through possibilities, but none made sense. Who would touch his things? Why? He worked on personal projects in that laptop, research, notes, drafts. Nothing anyone in the office would care about. Until he realized there was something someone might care about. The evidence. For months, quietly and carefully, Ethan had been gathering proof of what Marco had done. Not out of obsession, but out of the need for justice. Emails saved to private drives, suspicious financial trails he had tracked, statements from suppliers Marco had manipulated. Everything he found pointed to more than betrayal. Pointed to misconduct. Ethan had been building a case. Not to destroy Marco, but to expose the truth. He kept all those files hidden deep within the laptop. Until today. Now they were open. Moved. Viewed. His heartbeat quickened. A cold sweat formed on the back of his neck. He clicked through the folders faster, checking everything, hoping he was wrong. But the pattern was clear. Someone had gone through all of it. Then he saw it. A new file sitting on his desktop. "We need to talk." Those 4 words froze him. No sender, no signature, no explanation. The text inside was blank. The message was the file itself. A warning. A threat. A summons. Before he could think, he sensed someone behind him. A voice broke the silence. "Long time no see." Ethan spun around, breath catching in his throat. Marco stood there. His former business partner. The man who had ruined him. The one person Ethan never wanted to see again. Marco looked exactly as he remembered. Confident posture, tailored suit. Calm eyes that always seemed one step ahead of everyone else. But now there was something different behind that calm. Something watchful. Surprised. Marco asked lightly. Ethan forced himself to breathe. "Why are you here?" Marco gave a small shrug. "Just checking in." Ethan stood up slowly. "Checking in? After what you did?" A faint smirk touched Marco's lips. "If we start listing everything we've done, we'll be here all day. I'll get straight to the point." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've been digging, Ethan. A little too much." Ethan's been digging, Ethan. A little too much. Ethan's stomach twisted. "You went through my laptop?" Marco tilted his head. "You should be more careful. You're easy to read." Ethan clenched his jaw. "You have no right." "It's funny," Marco said, cutting him off. "How you think this is about rights?" Ethan felt heat rising up his neck. Months of pent-up anger, humiliation, and disappointment surged inside him. "You're scared," he said quietly. "You know what I found?" Marco leaned in, his calm expression turning sharp. "No. I'm prepared. Your little investigation has made certain people nervous. People you don't want to upset." Ethan frowned. "What people?" Marco didn't answer. Instead, he looked around the room, scanning it as if checking for eavesdroppers. Then he looked back at Ethan. "You should have stayed home today." The words landed like a punch. Ethan felt the world tilt for a second. Hannah's message flashed through his mind. "Stay home today. Someone's been watching you for weeks." His breath grew shallow. Marco watched his reaction carefully. You think you know what's happening, but you really don't. Ethan steadied himself. You've been watching me. Marco didn't deny it. He simply smiled. Someone has, he said. Let's leave it at that. Ethan felt a coldness spread through him. Not fear exactly, but the realization that he had stepped into something far bigger than he understood. Marco wasn't just protecting his reputation. He was protecting something else, something stronger, something darker. Marco straightened his suit. Here's my advice. Stop digging. Forget the past. Live your life. If you keep going, you won't just hurt me. You'll hurt yourself. Ethan stared at him, stunned by the boldness of the threat disguised as advice. Marco walked backwards a few steps, giving a small wave before turning away. Take care, old friend, he said without looking back. Ethan stood frozen as Marco exited the workspace and disappeared into the hallway. For a few seconds the room felt heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. People nearby pretended to focus on their screens, but Ethan could sense their curiosity. Someone knew something. Someone had seen something. Someone had been part of something. He sat down, his hands trembling slightly as he closed the laptop. The warning, the eyes, the open files, Marco's appearance. It all connected in a way he didn't want to face. He tried to gather his thoughts, but his mind spun in too many directions. Was Marco bluffing? Was someone really watching him? How far had they gone into his personal life? Was Hannah in danger for even texting him? Above all, the hardest question pressed against his chest. Had his pursuit of justice turned into a dangerous game he didn't realize he was playing? He leaned back in his chair, breathing slowly, trying to calm the storm inside him. Logic told him to stop. Reason told him to walk away. But the part of him wounded by betrayal and months of silent struggle couldn't accept the idea of giving up. He wasn't afraid of Marco. He wasn't afraid of the truth. But for the first time he felt something else. He wasn't the only player in this story anymore. Someone had been watching him. Someone had entered his world quietly, patiently, without leaving a trace. Someone wanted to keep him exactly where he was, confused, questioning, powerless. The urge for revenge that had lived inside him suddenly shifted. It wasn't just anger now. It was a need to understand who was threatening him, why, and what they were protecting. Ethan's mind sharpened. He realized something important. Marco hadn't come to intimidate him. Marco had come because he was worried. And if Marco was worried, the truth Ethan was digging for was even more dangerous than he thought. He closed his eyes for a moment, steadying his breath. Then he made a decision. He wasn't walking away. Not now. Not after this. Whatever game Marco and his unseen watchers were playing, Ethan was already in it. And he wasn't backing down. Ethan left the office before anyone else that evening, unable to shake the pressure that had been tightening around him all day. Every hour after Marco left felt heavier. Every sound in the workspace made him turn his head. Every footstep in the hallway felt like someone was approaching him with a plan he didn't understand. He couldn't focus on work, couldn't calm his racing thoughts, couldn't ignore the sense that he had crossed a line he never meant to cross. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the sky was a faded gold sinking into dark blue. The neighborhood looked peaceful, children's bikes left on lawns, porch lights turning on one by one, a couple walking their dog. Everything looked normal, so normal that it almost made his chest ache. After the day he'd had, the quiet felt unreal. He got out of the car and walked quickly to his front door, scanning his surroundings without admitting he was doing it. No strange cars. No figures in shadows. No signs of danger. Still, the message from Hannah echoed in his mind. Someone's been watching you for weeks. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house greeted him with silence. He set his bag down and exhaled shakily. He wanted to believe the worst was over, but the uneasy weight in his chest stayed. He moved room to room, turning on lights, almost as if trying to push out whatever invisible presence might be hiding in the dark corners of his thoughts. He sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. He didn't turn it on. He didn't move. He just breathed slowly, trying to separate fear from reality. Then a thought hit him, Hannah. He reached for his phone. Should he call her? Apologize for ignoring her warning? Ask what she meant. But he hesitated. What if contacting her dragged her into something worse? What if Marco or whoever was watching him found out? He put the phone down. Instead, he walked to his desk and opened his laptop. The screen glowed in the dim room. The same files from earlier sat in the same places. But this time, his fear wasn't just about being watched. It was about the choice he had to make. On one side of his screen was everything he'd gathered against Marco. Months of notes, emails, numbers, small clues that revealed the big picture. He had enough to expose Marco's truth. Enough to bring consequences. Enough to finally take back control of the story that had destroyed him. On the other side was the warning Marco had given him that morning. Stop digging or you'll hurt yourself. The threat wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and real. Marco wasn't someone who made careless statements. If he said people were nervous, he meant it. If he said someone was watching Ethan, it meant they were. Ethan clicked open one of the evidence files. He stared at the numbers he once memorized. They used to make him angry. Now they made him feel something else, tired. This whole journey had drained him. It had stolen sleep, peace, and trust. It had turned him into someone who scanned every street, every room, every reflection in a window. Was revenge worth becoming a version of himself he didn't recognize? He rubbed his face with both hands. But then another thought surfaced. The moment he was pushed out of his own company, the look in Marco's eyes, how casually he had dismissed their years of partnership. The memory alone made Ethan sit up straighter. If he let this go, if he walked away now, he would be letting Marco rewrite history again. He would be accepting the role of the defeated, letting the truth drown in silence. He hovered his mouse over the folder labeled Final Report, the file he had prepared for a potential legal submission. With one click, one email, one decision, he could change everything. His finger twitched. He took a deep breath. Then a knock at the door. It was soft, careful, but enough to make his entire body tense. He turned toward the hallway, heart thudding hard. No one visited him unannounced. Not at night. Not ever. The knock came again. He stood slowly. He wasn't sure what scared him more. The idea that someone dangerous was outside or the possibility that the knock was harmless and his fear was pulling him apart from the inside. He approached the door quietly and looked through the peephole. Hannah stood there, arms wrapped around herself, sweater pulled tight, eyes full of worry. Relief and confusion hit him at the same time. He quickly unlocked the door. "Hannah? What are you doing here?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She stepped inside before answering. "I had to talk to you. I'm sorry for coming this late, but I couldn't wait." She glanced around nervously. "I saw someone near your house last night. Not someone from around here. And I didn't want you to be alone today." Her words struck him harder than he expected. "How long have you known?" Ethan asked. "A few weeks," she said quietly. "At first I thought it was just someone passing by. But then I saw the same person again. Then again. They kept walking near your house at strange hours. I didn't want to scare you. Thought maybe. I don't know. Maybe you were already aware." "I wasn't," Ethan whispered. She looked down, guilt clouding her expression. "I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier." He shook his head. "No. You did enough." She looked at him again. "Ethan, are you involved in something dangerous?" The question was gentle, but it struck deep. He thought of the evidence on his laptop, of Marco's unexpected visit, of the open files, of the black sedan behind him on the drive to work, of the warning disguised as friendly advice. He didn't want to drag her into that world. "It's complicated," he said softly. Her eyes filled with worry. "Complicated things can get out of control. I don't want to see you hurt." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt heavy but honest, the kind of silence that showed two people standing on the edge of something uncertain. Ethan walked to his desk and looked down at his laptop, the glowing files, the weight of his choices. Hannah joined him, staying a step behind, as if ready to support him but not push him. "Is this about the person who wronged you?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Ethan said. The word felt both heavy and freeing. "And I don't know if continuing this is the right thing or the worst thing." Hannah nodded slowly. Revenge can feel like the only way to make the hurt stop. But sometimes it only keeps the hurt alive. Ethan stared at the files. The evidence. The truth. Everything he had worked on. Everything he had suffered for. Everything he had carried alone. "If I don't do something," he said. He gets away with it. And if you do, she replied softly, you might lose yourself. Her words hit a place he had been avoiding. The rage he carried wasn't just about Marco. It was about losing his identity, his voice, his trust. Revenge felt like a path to reclaim what he lost, but at the same time it kept him chained to the past. He reached for the laptop, slowly closed the lid and stood up. I know what I have to do, he said. Hannah watched him, waiting. He walked to the corner of the room, grabbed a sealed envelope, one he had prepared weeks ago but never mailed. It contained all the evidence, neatly organized, truth without emotion. He had addressed it to a regulatory board known for handling cases without bias. He hadn't sent it before because he wanted to be the one to expose Marco. He wanted to see Marco face the fallout. He wanted the satisfaction of being the one who finally held him accountable. But now he saw that desire for what it was, a chain. He handed the envelope to Hannah. Will you drop this off tomorrow morning? He asked. She nodded, holding it gently as if it were fragile. Of course. He exhaled, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. By choosing this path, he wasn't destroying Marco himself. He wasn't carrying out revenge in the way he once imagined. He wasn't staying trapped in the anger that shaped his year. He was letting the truth go where it needed to go. Without hate. Without fear. Without carrying the weight alone. Hannah gave him a small warm smile. You did the right thing. Ethan returned it, though faintly. I hope so. After she left, the house felt lighter. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. He sat on the couch, finally allowing his muscles to relax. For the first time in months, he felt the possibility of peace. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know how Marco would react. He didn't know if the Watchers would disappear or stay. But he knew one thing. He had chosen himself over revenge. He had stepped out of the storm instead of becoming part of it. And for the first time since his world fell apart, Ethan felt like he was finally walking in the right direction.